Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening to Azure Infinitum Podcast. This is your host, Hikaru Kazushime from Runaround Network, also known as Reika Fujishima in Azure Infinitum. Today, we have a couple new faces here on the podcast, and one returning face, Shalindra Quartztail,
Yo.
Azure Infinitum Lieutenants Gracie and Leo.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Gracie.
And today we're actually going to be going over a list of Azure Infinitum community updates. And following that, we're going to be talking about the really big, awesome news dump that came on Friday, the announcement showcase. Heck of a show in place of the usual Final Fantasy XIV fan festival that would have normally had its third festival by now, and actually shown us the FF14 expansion info in full. By now, we would have actually known everything about it by this point. Typically, Square Enix will have one usually in the fall of a patch year following the year of an expansion launch, so it's like an every 2-year system. But prior to the year of an expansion, they will have had a North American and a European and Japanese fan fest. At one point, it was actually like North American, then European, then Japanese, and then one year it was actually North American, Japanese, and Europe. But in place of that, due to the pandemic that's going on, we actually got this really awesome long showcase that came out Friday. If you haven't checked it out, you can always look at the recording or check out videos online that are kind of breaking down everything that was talked about. We are going to be seeing the next expansion for Final Fantasy XIV this fall. We don't know what month yet. However, this could fall anytime between September and November. In May, though, we are going to have a digital fan fest. So we're actually going to find out a lot more. We currently know one of the new jobs. It's free. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a 2-day. I think it's a 2-day event, and we're going to be doing another Azure Infinitum watch party like we did for the Ultimate Showcase on Friday. So, which was a really awesome time. We had a blast during that watch party.
Yeah,
we had. Huh? What's the show?
It was just absolutely great.
Yeah, we had
It really was.
lots of people show up. The channel on Discord was packed and pretty chaotic, but it was a good chaos. I'd say it was a positive chaos, and we had a good time. The text channel we had raffles. A lot of people enjoyed that, and I really like the way that we were able to kind of do that this time for well, not FanFest, but for new expansion info. So this is new. We have never been in a situation before where the content cycle for 14, ever since it launched, has been actually out of pattern a little bit. It's usually a patch every 3 or 4 months, which they've gotten back to that now. But we're now seeing the expansion come out a little bit further in the year. We're seeing it come out in fall rather than summer. So that actually has an effect on our community in a good way, a positive way. It gives us a lot of extra time to be able to prepare. And I know while some people are anxious and raring to go to the moon in this next expansion, but I'm actually, especially as the master of the community, I'm actually very thankful and fortunate feeling to have this extra time, and I think a lot of other folks on our teams appreciate that as well.
Honestly, though, so like that whole thing about being a little bit later with the 1 or 2 pieces of content coming out, it's really impressive that they've stayed on course as much as they have.
Oh, it is.
Other games, other MMOs, or even just games that have regular content releases have really had a struggle, which is understandable. Teams that are normally working in person are now working at distance. Square Enix really actually stepped up and did a really good job at meeting that. Even if there was a little bit of a stumble at first, that's expected. Other teams haven't recovered at all from that.
Yeah,
right.
I can name a few. For one, just not recovered.
Well, their most major competitor in the MMO for a subscription, which is WoW, who now has been thoroughly destroyed in subscription base from what we saw in the announcement trailer at 20 million. That's ridiculous.
Man.
But they've always had really long patches. I mean, I spent quite a few years over there before I brought my refugee status over to Final Fantasy. But yeah, it was 8 months for a patch this year or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, and and now we're seeing the patch cycle 14 is kind of returning. 3, what was it? 5. I always want to go to 3. It was 5. 5.2 was 5.2. The better part of 2020. due to how long it took them to actually set up at home. Although that was still very impressive that they were able to kind of like, grab the reins again by the end of the year and get things back in order.
Well, I mean, even as extended as 5.2 was, they were still putting out hot fixes and minor patch. And
that's true. Yep, that's very true.
So, I mean, it wasn't, we weren't left in the dark with a lot of it.
Right.
And that's the most impressive thing, I think.
Agreed.
So, while the devs are making new content and getting ready for the expansion, and the rest of the game also prepares, we here in Azure have we have patch 5.4 we're currently in right now, and that is one kind of two patches before the expansion, because there's going to be a 5.5 and a 5.5 part 2. That's another thing that we learned pretty recently through the announcement showcase and the producers stream that was just a little bit later that night. And I think that's pretty interesting, because that's going to give a different effect than last year, where we were just waiting a long extra time for content through 5.2. I know that they were preparing, but for the game, people in the game, it felt like a long wait. And to have a patch split into two parts, I haven't seen them do that since I think the days of ARR, when we had a 3-part patch 2.5. So that was a good move, I believe, on their part, to keep people interested. And we may actually see some kind of content regarding the current 24-man raids that is actually going to go beyond the third and final, the third that is usually a final raid for a 24-man. So really interesting to see how that turns out. That's going to be the Nier Automata collaboration finale, and whatever post finale thing that it has as well will be interesting. I know that this is also sort of a different expansion during Shadowbringers 5.0. We have seen 24-man raids that have mid-patch like quests that have come out in between patches. Well, not in between patches, but because it comes out every other patch for a normal 24-man raid. So the patch that wouldn't have the raid would have a quest. That's pretty interesting. They're starting to do things like that. And the new 48-man Savage for the Relic. Man, yeah. I mean, that's something. That's really something. That's the first time they've ever done Savage content outside of 8-man raid, as far as I know. I can't think back to anything I've ever seen that wasn't. So, there's a lot on the horizon. We'll get a little bit more to the announcement showcase in a second, and our thoughts on it. Did you have something, Gracie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we actually, as a community, have the honor of having someone who really dove into that, really head first as well. So shout to Delphi, super proud of her.
Right.
Showed up in the yard last night with that brand new Mao, looking all good. Yeah. No, seriously, already cleared DR Savage is crazy.
It's really awesome that to see folks that are really passionate about content, and I know that our scout Delphi is very, very big on Bozja, and it's pretty honorable. I know during events she's been incredibly helpful, so like Gracie said, shout out to Delphi for taking that on and learning that. I know that she's already been sharing a lot with the FC, tips and such on DR Delubrum Reginae, the Tomb of the Queen in Latin. Let's talk about some Azure community updates here real quick before we move on. So we had a few updates and additions to our weekly schedule for FF14 events in Azure Infinitum. We have the addition of Emerald Weapons Extreme Trial taking place Monday nights as the premiere event for the new late night time, or evening time I should say, for Monstrous Mondays. That is our Monday event where we have normally for the prime time at least, we have a rotating Shadowbringers Extreme Trials. If you don't know what Extreme Trials are and you're listening to this podcast, these are the special versions of the boss fights that you would normally encounter in most of the main scenario or side quests. And this is the extreme. Doesn't mean that they're impossibly hard, like harder content in the game, but it does mean that there's a challenge and there's a good deal of mechanics that have to be learned. The Emerald Weapon is being featured here from Final Fantasy VII and is now included into 14 in this series of quests called the Sorrow of Werelit Saga. And we've already seen Ruby, we've seen Sapphire, and we actually got a preview of Diamond Weapon over in the, what was it? It was the
live
producers, yeah, the producer stream, the live letter. And so that was interesting. We actually got to see it before it came out, where all the other weapons were either not shown or they were only shown on the website right before patch launch. So we got a preview of Diamond really early, in my opinion. We've also added late night times to some of our other events in the week, but we've also removed we removed a couple morning times. For those who may have not seen the announcement, we actually canceled our morning Bozja. There wasn't getting a lot of attendance, but we are seeing the late night Bozja and the primetime Bozja on Fridays still getting some good attendance. That is the content that supports the current relic. And we had to postpone morning maps. That's our morning Treasure Thursdays run. Just kind of the same thing. January was also very, coming off of the holidays, kind of a sleepy start to the year. First couple of weeks of activity, and then now we're actually seeing a huge rise in activity in our community. Coming from several sources. We're doing a recruitment campaign. We are finalizing our Resurgence Ceruleum Rising plan. We've talked about that a lot in previous podcasts. Big restorative overhaul plan for the community, to put it in a nutshell. And we are seeing a lot of folks bring their friends. We're seeing people bring their family, and the community is growing. And the community is growing. It's very good. And with this rise in activity, we can always assume that there might be a point where we would want to bring back more times for certain things, but currently our evening events are actually killing it right now, and they're doing very well. And the primetime events are sustaining fine; those are doing well. And I don't think we haven't added anything else to events besides Emerald, I believe, yeah. And now we're basically looking at taking on more content than Azure's actually seen in our event schedule before. So good stuff, very positive, and getting a lot of attendance. So.
I remember you mentioning that at this point last year we had, I think it was a total of 5 events running.
Yep.
Constantly, and I think we're up to 13, 14 now?
Yeah, 13 or 14.
Like
yeah, 13 or 14. Yeah.
Every week.
And they're consistent, yeah, and rarely, if not ever, canceled.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've made a lot of growth in the last year.
A lot of progress in all areas, and as some may know or assume, these things do take a lot of awareness. They take successfully performing the event and getting people into them and stuff for attendance to continue each week. We have to build a lot of hype, and there's a lot more that goes into it than some people would assume. We've kind of taken the extra steps to put information for our events on all across the community. There's 3 websites that have the events on it: the Facebook event page, the community site Azure FM, and our main site AzureInfinitum.com. AzureInfinitum.com actually has a Google Calendar you can subscribe to and actually get updates on your phone when we have an event. Then we also have our event channel Discord, which has all the posters, and we try to share those posters as much as possible. That's just another wave of awareness. So announced at our Saturday company Grand Assembly, we actually have a Azure Day weekend on the horizon. This will be taking place March 13th and 14th of next month. We will be having 2 full days of events back to back, game shows, prizes, raffles, races, all kinds of crazy stuff. Kind of the more fun, crazy social events, versus the content events. But there will be dungeon speed races. Sometimes, some Azure Day weekends, we even do a maze out of a mansion, a 3-story maze, and people really love it. And what's funny about the maze is that it's usually got hidden objects in it. You actually have to find all the objects. So even if you make it to the end, you still got to tell the person at the end what all the objects were that you found in the maze. And so it could be pretty crazy. And people, especially streamers in our community, love it. So, we might be seeing the return of the maze, and we usually have our big FC parades during Azure Days, and it's just kind of our quarterly celebration of the FC. We do it about 4 times a year, except for the November one is a very special anniversary version. And then we have our Summerfest as well. So that's gonna be fun this year. That's gonna be right before expansion launch. Should be right before expansion launch. So with Azure Day on the horizon, we've also got, at the end of February, the 28th, we've actually got our PvP tournament. That's going to be a series of 1v1s, bracketed tournament over at the Wolves Den. And the tournament victor will have a chance to face our current Infinitum champion, Feilana Breeze, who will be defending their title coming February 28th. That's going to be gathering at the Wolves Den at about 8 p.m. EST, 5 p.m. PST. So people who want to participate can just show up, and the event is synced, so you don't have to worry about like who's higher level in PvP. And then also, people are also welcome to watch. This is something that's viewable just by being there. You can watch it. You don't have to queue into anything or anything like that. So a lot of time there's a crowd, and they're really excited, and watching the duels, they're best out of 3, so it can be a good time. We don't know if we're going to see that title change or not. Feilana has been training really hard for this.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I've been spending a couple hours a night with her talking about that stuff. Like she hits me up at like 1 a.m. in the morning, like, "Hey, what do you think about this matchup?" I'm like, "I think I'm trying to sleep."
But yeah, no,
Wonderful. Her dedication is great.
She's definitely been a champion worthy of the title.
A little bit of information about Infinitum champions in our community. Winning their PvP tournament, which we set up to be about a quarterly tournament, the champion will actually get a special rank in the community, which also places them in a certain position on our Lodestone official roster. They can also, so basically they're spotlighted, and they have an entry on our champions page, as well as whatever rank that they were previously will actually be, the champion rank will actually adjust to that. So technically in the game, when you actually look, Feilana is actually Scout Captain, and you can tell by looking at Feilana's rank on Discord. But also on the Lodestone roster, the rank will actually be shifted in the hierarchy, also based on like where that person's rank is. So if they're a member, they'll be just slightly above the members. If they're a Scout Captain, they'll be with the Scout Captains. That's where Feilana is now. So it's kind of nice that we were able to do that, to give a little bit more spotlight to it. In the past, we didn't have the champion rank, and so we just kind of would like refer to them as a champion, but I never really felt like that was enough. So so there's that. And tournament victor of the dual tournament will be getting 4 million gil, along with a set of special company items like the exclusive portraits and figurines that you have to buy with credits from Free Company. Second place is going to be given 500k gil and a set of company items and an emerald barding. We have some interesting semi-finalist prizes as well, because we didn't want to pick third place because it'd be impossible to have a third place for the way the bracket's set up. So everybody that makes it to semifinals is actually getting a type of participation prize. So that's going to be new this time. So a lot more incentives as well, and then just the fun of it all. It can be a really fun event to watch, and we usually will either stream it or have commentary during it. It's pretty entertaining. So definitely come out.
Look at me, I'm just a commentator.
Shao is like usually our commentator for PvP. But some people have been asking if we return to 4v4s again, which we've done in the past, where we've had 3, 4, 5 4-man teams enter the feast together, and then a spectator party that would watch. We actually the very last time we did 4v4s, it didn't have anywhere near as big as reception as the 1v1s. So we kind of holding off on that for right now. Wanted to focus on improving our 1v1 tournament, making it even better. So we're going to stick to that for now. But in the future, I could see us having a type of 4v4 tournament again.
That doesn't mean though that we won't have some Azure representation in the feast, because the PvP event definitely has had a couple teams that have stepped up and said, "Hey, so we met through this event. We really want to get in it on the feast. How do you do that?" So starting to really branch out into those areas that may have done in the past that fell off a little bit, because getting creative with the content now that we're getting towards the end of the expansion.
Oh yeah, that's true. And don't forget that you can actually check all the updates and news for Azure Infinitum anytime by checking our announcements channel in Discord first. I highly recommend that as the most current, up-to-date, max amount of info area. But you can also follow some of our news on Twitter as well as our Facebook. We try to keep up to date on those things as much as possible. A lot of times we're sharing stuff straight from 14's accounts, but we'll also try to update with anything that's like, anything big will get talked about there usually. But the announcements channel in Discord is still that place where you're going to find everything current that's going on. So don't forget to check that. And the recording for Saturday's assembly, that's our assembly for all of February. That's up on YouTube now on the Runaround Network YouTube. Going to go ahead and move on to talk about the announcement showcase. A lot of news. So this is going to be the featured segment, the meat of the podcast. Let's go ahead and actually start with Shalindra. Go ahead and tell us how you felt about that showcase on Friday.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I think the best announcement that I've heard is, guess what? We're getting a new healing class.
Yes.
We've waited 2 expansions now to have a new healer, and I'm very much looking forward to Sage. I like it. I really do. It's not going to be from everything we've seen in the showcase. It's not going to be your standard healer. It's not going to be like a white mage where it's reactionary. It's going to be all about it's what they're calling a barrier healer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very impressed with it. It's something new. It's not something I'm used to, and I'm looking forward to see what we can do with it.
Yeah, and they also mentioned that not only is they referring to it as a barrier healer, but they also were going to adjust the other present healers to fit. I believe it was White Mage and Astro, and then Scholar and Sage. That the first 2 were going to be, regular healers. I don't remember if they had a term for that.
Or regen healers is what they're going to be, but they're going to be the output. That's what they are. They
okay.
They utilize regen.
Yeah.
But they're your hard output healers. Yeah.
And then barrier.
And then barriers.
Sage
and Scholar.
And Scholar.
So very shieldy here. I almost said heroes. Oh, yeah, I guess they're heroes. Healers, and then the very straight healing. White Mage and Astrologian. Yeah, Astrologian is probably going to get an interesting rework.
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
It's literally reaction versus proaction.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. How about you, Gracie?
One of your FC scholars, also super hyped. So yeah, the natural progression of moving on to Sage definitely feels like something I've been waiting for literally years now. Came into it a little bit cynical, feeling a little bit cut after not getting one last expansion, but worth the wait. Definitely worth the wait. Sage looks fun. I like the idea of that we're moving on to a new story arc. I really enjoyed how they presented it. Koji Fox being hilarious as per normal. Actually watched it with my wife because wife and girlfriend and another friend of ours all came together and we kind of watched it together. 2 of those people actually being fluent in Japanese, so we got the nice special treatment of here's what he's actually saying and not just what Koji Fox is interpreting for him, which was hilarious in and of itself. They have a wonderful dynamic. So the not just the content they were giving, but their stage presence made it enjoyable, even for the stuff that might have been a little bit drier. Like you already said, excited about going to the moon.
Oh yeah.
To the moon!
Wonderful seeing how far they're going to stretch the Xenos story, because this guy apparently is just going to be in Final Fantasy XIV forever. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. This is good. It's what I came back to Final Fantasy for, and I'm happy I made that decision.
Oh yeah, well said. And there's there is just so much on the horizon. It's really amazing that they let us know about 5.5 on the same night as the showcase. So we get hit with this bomb of awesome, for 6.0, the new expansion, and then a couple hours later they're like, oh yeah, and then here's all this other stuff you don't have to wait that long for, because we've got 2 patches, a 2-part final patch for Shadowbringers coming up, and so we got to see a lot there. I'm personally really looking forward to the theme of the expansion being a mix of everything. They mentioned that they were going to have a bit of high fantasy, a bit of technology, a bit of this, a bit of that, and just kind of like a mixture of the themes that we've gotten used to already, and that we're going to be seeing a lot of characters we've met on that journey show up by the finale of it, and I love stories like that. I really love stories that are like, all the people you met on your journey, they're helping you at the end. I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but it kind of reminds me of when the times in Dragon Ball where Goku was like relying on everybody's energy, and, from all the characters that you meet on the way, and to beat some big bad guy. And I don't know, I think we're gonna see something like that. Everybody give the Warrior of Light your ether,
I mean, we did do that at the end of 5.0.
Yeah. That's true. And Oh, go ahead.
This most recent one too, not just 5.0, but 5.4 storyline, same thing.
Especially
with
the creating the
channeling ether into. So there's a lot of that. I think this is going to be very like Final Fantasy.
It's almost like they set that up.
Culmination feeling, yeah.
Like they set up that whole like, we want you to know that you can channel ether.
Right.
So my prediction here, and then we'll I'm going to hear from you next, Leo. But my prediction is that this might be, I mean, this is basically, I think spoilers are okay here. We've already kind of been talking about it, but this is a prediction. I mean, we don't know if this is going to happen or not, but I have a very strong feeling that Xenos and Fandaniel are playing each other. Like, I think Fandaniel is like thinking, oh yeah, I'm so smart, this guy is going to help me accomplish my goal, and then I'm going to destroy everything. And Xenos is like, this guy, thinks that he's using me just because he's an ancient, and I'm going to take over, Zodiark when he summons it, and then kill him, and then use Zodiark's power to kill the Warrior of Light. That's just what my prediction is. And whether that happens or not, we'll see. But what I do really like is I just like the vibe of the expansion. Endwalker. I don't think we've said the name of it this whole show. Just the expansion. But as far as Endwalker goes, that trailer with the music. Now the music has really affected me the last couple of days. I've been listening to a few people's like renditions of it that were really fast on YouTube with putting up like their own versions, and we've only heard like half of the theme, because they're still following the same pattern that they normally do with fan festivals. They show a half cut segment of the opening cutscene, and they show half of the song. They're doing the same thing they always do. So that song is much longer, and the cutscene that we saw where they're fighting like the dragon and stuff, there's a much longer cutscene to that too. Their cutscenes are usually longer than that. So we're going to end up seeing more of that and more of the music, most likely by May, or at May, the May Digital Fan Fest. And just so far, the vibe of that song and the vibe of the expansion, to me, it's giving me that feeling like, oh, we've come all this way. Now it's time to deal, with after all this stuff that's happened, we're going to finally deal with these last two guys, and then everything is going to wrap up in 6.0. And then 6.1 is going to be the start of a new story. I think that's pretty incredible as well. We don't have to wait for 6.5. Yeah, we're going to have to wait for 2023 for 6.5 to come out. So, I mean, technically the stories actually wrap up in the 0.3 patch, but you know what I mean. So I want to know, what are you looking forward to, Leo?
Oh gosh, to try and just limit it to just a couple of things. I'm excited about the whole entire thing. This will be actually my first expansion launch that I've been able to play. So I am insanely excited about that. I think one of the things that probably had me screaming like a fangirl was the reveal of Anima. Because Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy game. It was the game that got me into RPGs, into fantasy games to start with. And seeing that image on screen, I'm not going to lie, I muted myself and I screamed. As I was that excited about it.
Right here.
We did that in the voice channel for the watch party. So I'm super excited to see how they work that into the story.
past that, I'm really excited to see how are we getting to the moon,
Lunar whale.
and how many gil is it going to take to teleport to the moon whenever we want to go back?
1 million.
Didn't they already show us the Star Destroyer, like in the come on, it's a Star Wars crossover.
Yes.
We saw it. Like they've already showed us. You can't convince me otherwise. My brain is stuck there.
It's headcanon right there.
And that's the most important canon is headcanon.
It's the Eorzea class Star Destroyer.
The thing I liked, Leo,
Mhm.
is the fact that Anima looked exactly like Anima.
I know. And I didn't realize that the person that actually designed Anima in 10 is also on the art team for 14.
Yep, that's incredible.
That
20
is-
years
That
later.
made my heart so happy.
Yep.
And that's the Anima we all know and love.
And they touched up the original design just a little bit.
Yeah, and Seymour's mom still looks great.
Yes. She has aged so well.
It's like they just Seymour before the final battle of 10 or something just like threw his mom up on the moon for safekeeping. Like, I'll just put this
I
here.
still am convinced that somehow we're going to see Seymour in this game somehow.
Oh, God.
I don't know how,
Not
but
Seymour. Not again.
A million years.
I could imagine them putting in that famous like Seymour boss music. Some of those the finale one was really popular.
yes.
Yeah.
Feels on that would just be incredible.
I will. I'm not gonna lie. Whenever we fight Anima, I will cry.
That's the first of what is usually 2 new EX trials, or trials that end up having EX trials that are like the first real challenge that they release, because Savage Raids don't usually come out for about a month or 2 after the expansion. So we're basically going to see Anima X as the first one we'll be taking on. I can see Monstrous Mondays, Anima X parties be interesting, very interesting.
Yes. And I can't wait for her to throw us into oblivion during that first fight.
Oh, imagine
Throw us literally under the floor.
Imagine that Aeon Overdrive for Anima in 14, and what that's going to look like with 14's graphics and
Exactly.
and
We're
the,
gonna go under
slightly
the
updated
floor.
Yeah, we all thought Ockmorn was a painful mechanic.
Right.
Ockmorn's at least one hit on the same target constantly.
Right.
It's going to be raid wide over and over.
Oh yeah. Those punchy arms going like DBZ
man.
speeds.
Oh, jeez.
I know
Tank
people that,
limit break incoming. I can see it now.
people that have not. Oh yeah. People who have not seen Anima in 10 are going to be very surprised by that.
Yes. Also, if you haven't played 10, go play it.
I was just talking to one of our generals, Sebastian, about playing Final Fantasy X. He hasn't played 10 yet, and I was telling him, I said, it's so good that I will almost pay you to play it, because that's how much I love it. Like, if you have not experienced 10,
I loved it too.
go play it now. Go get the remaster, play it now.
Isn't this the 20th anniversary for 10?
25th. I want to say it's 20th
Yes,
or the 25th.
this is the 20th. It came out in 2001.
20th.
Yep.
Yeah.
2001. So this is the 20th anniversary of Final Fantasy X. Which reminds me, I actually posted a 10.3 video about the curious case of Final Fantasy X-3 in our video channel Discord. That's a whole nother topic that we don't want to get too much into, but there's a good amount of reasons why they really want to make it and why they haven't done it yet, and that how they actually plan to eventually, but they got to get the rest of 7 remake out of the way, which could literally run until 2029 if there's 4 parts. So yeah.
Meanwhile, us PC players are still waiting for part 1. Hey, we only got 2 months left.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That'll be April 13th.
It's true. So when it comes down to the showcase and also 5.5, we are seeing new beast tribes. The first one that they've shown was the elephant people, the Matanga. I actually kind of expected that because of the connection with Uznair. Thavnair is the modern day Uznair, just like all of the other city-states have their past versions that were previous civilizations. Specifically how you've got Belladia for Thanalan, Gilmora for Gridania. What was the one for Limsa? I forgot if that was one. But Uznair, we actually got to see the canals of Uznair as the maps in Stormblood, and so now we're actually going to go to Thavnair, the current day Thavnair, and we're going to see all those, how colorful it was. We kind of got a glimpse of how colorful it was with the Uznair canals, just a little bit, even though that was Uznair, not Thavnair. But interesting, though. Really interesting design. If you've seen the picture of Radz-at-Han, the capital city of Thavnair, we've heard a lot about that over the years, and now we finally get to see what it looks like. And that's going to be an interesting place to explore. Really interesting art direction for the expansion, because there's places that are in the land of Thavnair that are actually really high fantasy, and other places that are very just very Indian aesthetic kind of. I think that's really interesting, or Hindu aesthetic kind of that they're going with, some of the art direction. And then you've got other places in 5.0 that are like, you get the moon, you've got like decimated dark Garlemald, and very, very, very big in contrast, and then we're going to see Pagelthon. That's a dungeon coming out in 5.5, which is a region that is slightly to the east of Thanalan that you can see on the world map that I don't think they've hardly ever talked about in game, to my knowledge. Interesting that they're doing that. 6.0. There's a lot coming. Oh, we've also got the Pandemonium raid series. I found that was a really interesting choice, and I was blown away because there is a deep lore story, and I won't get too much into the lore here. I won't too much into the lore, but
we don't want a 3-hour podcast.
Everybody in Azure knows about my lore talks, but there is a interesting backstory regarding Laha Brea and the Esper Mateus, the Mateus Esper. And for those that don't know, all of these sigils or glyphs, officially they're called glyphs, on the Ascian masks are all part of the glyphs that represent the Espers, a specific set of Espers. And a lot of people don't know that the names of the Ascians come from the something called the Barheim Passage, which is a story about a group of heroes called the Scions of Light. And this is a story that Square has told through several games, and some of their like item descriptions, and like there's certain players guides even that have lore in them that weren't in the game that added to that story. And in 14, we've actually seen Yoshi direct the team to touch on a lot of things that were background like that in Final Fantasy, to kind of give either an origin story or bring it into the game. Just like how we're seeing segments, what I believe we're seeing is segments of the third FF12 game, which is called Final Fantasy XII Fortress, that never came out, but the script is actually online. You can read it. You can see concept art, read the script, and see how that game is supposed to go. We're seeing a lot of Fortress show up in the Bajra storyline, with the son of Bosch and him taking on the role of Gabrant and all that. And that's very interesting to see that. And we're also now seeing the Laha Brea Mateus, sort of hint. I mean, we don't know anything else about it officially, but it's really interesting to me that it's Pandemonium, because Pandemonium, for those that played Final Fantasy II, will remember that was one of the first layers of hell, and Emperor Mateus, who is believed in the deep lore to have left his soul behind, he had to actually be killed in the afterlife as well as the main world. He was just a really crazy, powerful villain, and there is a really far it's really deep into it. I won't, like I said, we won't go too deep into it, but the fact that Emmett Silk had the title of Hades, and Hades is typically the ruler of hell, and Mateus had to be killed in hell, and Mateus' spirit endured and I guess was resummoned as an Esper or something like that. And there's a whole story behind that Esper and how that Esper even came to be, and that Laha Brea had basically killed it and taken its power, and that's how Laha Brea got the Mateus sigil, or glyph, I mean. And so I'm just really interested to see how Pandemonium is in 14 in general, and how much they actually touch on that backstory between Hades, Pandemonium, Laha Brea, and Mateus, how that all happened. So
That would be awesome.
I really like their current storytelling style, where they have for a while, as you said, put little snippets of things in player guides and other games,
Yeah.
and then they're taking those threads and they're using that to weave the mural that is Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh,
Like 14 gets to be the the small little like nod style culmination to some of these games that have threads like that never got to be finished.
exactly.
That's like one of my favorite parts about this game is the little
Yep.
tidbits
too.
that you get from every other Final Fantasy game.
Me too.
Yeah.
'Cause I haven't played all of them, but
And it weaves just a beautiful story. And it's,
in and of itself, yeah, outside of those, it's its own, like, you could do that in a lot of other ways and make a really ugly present story while
Right.
still finalizing for the other ones.
Yeah.
But they not only complete these other like little like stories that people have been waiting for and learning about for decades now, but they do it in a way that makes the current story also really captivating and interesting, which is
Exactly.
honestly, that's impressive, like from a storytelling standpoint.
It is really impressive. The inclusion of like Doma, for example, which we see in Final Fantasy VI and we hear about in other games, and the Crystal Tower, the whole how far they've taken the Crystal Tower when it was just simply an endgame dungeon in Final Fantasy III, and the backstory behind Xande, the Allagans, Cloud of Darkness, all of that, and there's so much more than that to get into.
Diablos,
The
other
Ivalice,
yeah.
like Ivalice is in 14. It's connected. It's there, and it's given us, 14 has given us portions of the timeline. It's basically taught us about where 6 happened, where 4 happened, how long ago 4 was. We've got, the Order of Dragoon's backstory. Goes really far back and touches on. Even mentions Kane Highwind and
as the first dragoon.
No, Rickard Highwind
no,
was the first.
Rickard
Kane,
Highwind.
yeah,
Rickard
Kane
Highwind.
supposedly had started it for the Ishgardians after he
Yes.
traveled there when he left after Story of 4 or something like that. But there's so much connected. Final Fantasy VI, Gestalt Empire, being a precursor to the Garleans, but also a successor to the Guggans, which we hear about the Guggans
we
in
also
Tactics
had 10
and 14.
I mean, we had 10 connections from very early on. If you look at
Right.
parts of Boyle and Bahamut.
Well, for Final Fantasy
if you look-
X, there's direct connections through the minions and the items.
Yeah, but the specific I'm referring to are the rings when you're going down in Coil 3. Specifically those.
I didn't notice that.
You see those glyphs. All the glyphs that you see in there are modifications of like
Really?
the entrance glyph of 10,
Huh.
or a teleport glyph in 10, or this.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I noticed.
All right, guys. So, one thing that I thought would be an interesting topic here for our last chunk of the podcast: first impressions of Final Fantasy XIV. And I have I'm pretty confident. I have a pretty confident feeling that the four of us have probably started around different times. I think I started originally since launch, and been following the game since the beginning, and was in beta. And I know how long have you been in 14, Leo?
I have been in 14 since very shortly before the launch of Stormblood.
Okay.
I wasn't quite up to level at the time. I can't remember like what that patch cycle was. I think that one was the Far Edge of Fate.
Yeah, Far Edge
of
Fate. Yep.
3.5 and 3.55.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when I originally started playing. I don't even remember how. I think it was several friends that I played Guild Wars 2 with, which was my original MMO.
Mm-hmm.
Moved over to this game, and it piqued my interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard of it before. Somehow I had never heard of Final Fantasy XIV before.
Oh, okay.
So like, I'll give it a shot. I probably won't like it. And literally a week into it, I was just like, where has this been all my life? I fell in love with it. Even going through ARR the first time, it was a beautiful game, beautiful storytelling, and it only got better as I went through Heaven's Word.
Yep, it does. The scope increases, the amount of characters you meet. Oh man,
their storytelling has improved. So, like going through ARR directly into Heaven's Word for the first time, you can see through the 100, at the time it was the 100 quest slog between ARR and Heavensward, you could see their storytelling improve through that. And then when you hit Heavensward, it was just like somebody hit just like a springboard into the clouds.
They've gone heaven's word.
I tip my hat to you, sir.
So how about you, Shal? First impressions. How long have you been playing?
I've been playing since 2.3 Defenders of Eorzea.
Oh, okay.
So,
so quite a while.
I've been playing quite a while, and my first impression was the first time I hit 50.
Yeah, end of 2014 there.
And started going in through Circus Tower for the first time.
Yeah.
And going, wow. Because, that's the whole Crystal Tower saga.
Yep.
And, you're seeing all of this now coming to a brand new life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I went through the Coils of Bahamut.
Yep.
And like I was saying earlier, noticing, wait, there's tie-ins to 10 here. There's tie-ins to this. And it was just absolutely, it was, because I'd known about it even before I knew about it with 1.0. I just didn't play.
Right.
And then I saw the reboot, and I'm like, okay, let me give it a little while before I do anything. And I mean, I kind of have a unique perspective because I started on a Japanese data center. So I'm playing through everything. I'm listening in English, but every time I had to do a duty in a party, it was Japanese. So for me, a lot of the party stuff was a bit lost. But once I got out of there and I saw how the story was progressing, never went back. I mean, this will be, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This will be my 4th expansion, and it like everyone else, I'm just so. The storytelling is just. I'm one of those that, and I think you remember from when Shadowbringers came out. I was one of the first through MSQ because I just wanted the story. I wanted to know what happens. And that's how I usually am with any Final Fantasy game, or even any game, really. I get so into the story. And with 14, I just lost myself, through 2.3 and 2.4, and I just needed more. And here I am, still, a little less than 7 years almost now.
Wow.
And,
yeah, that would be 7 years since that point.
Yeah. And here I am 7 years later, still going, still wanting more.
Oh yeah, for sure.
that tells volumes about the game, about any game, but specifically about this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few games that I've done that with. That the story has compelled me enough to stay that long.
Right.
I think the last one that was really like that was City of Heroes, and that's going back a long way.
Says a lot for any narrative to be able to keep people interested for that long. So,
Truth.
And not have like any major screw ups, and I mean, I'm not counting like Rob on X long ago, but,
Rob on X.
I mean,
learning how to deal with
like
100 people,
like a failure, like an actual like boring expansion or anything like that. Like I don't think we'll ever see that from them. They have so much passion behind what they're doing, and it was really nice at the showcase that Yoshi really confirmed to us that this was like his life's work, that he would probably see himself work on 14 for as long as he lives. And
I love the comment that Koji made about raising him back so he can work on it some more.
Oh, and then he goes, Necromancer.
Yes.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I giggled at that. That was great.
I mean, it's just been, and now that I'm here and on Midgard's Armor, and I found all you crazy people.
Oh,
I'm not going
anywhere. Yeah, you just had your 2-year anniversary for being in Azure?
On the 3rd.
Yeah, man, time flies.
And this will be my 2nd expansion with Azure, and it's a different perspective from where I was then to where I am now. But it's it's going to be a lot of fun. That's all I can say. It's
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and what really excites me too is that not only do we have an expansion on the horizon, a 2-part patch on the horizon, and a lot of time to prepare. I'm also, as just as somebody, in the free company, I'm excited to see our community by the time we get to the expansion and all of the projects that we have underway to prepare for that, and just being able to go in with a just an extremely active and prepped, Azure, going in and slamming that expansion is going to be unforgettable this year.
Yeah, we did that.
It's going to be unforgettable.
With Shadowbringers.
We did, but we're sitting in an even better position now.
Yeah,
we're probably sitting in the best position I think we've ever been in, and I'm extremely proud of everybody that's contributed to that.
And what other FC can say that we're going to have 90 days worth of
grade 3 buffs? Yeah.
Yes.
For those listening, we are charging the special grade 3 buffs, the best buffs in the game, for the FC community-wide buffs, and we are looking at a huge percentage increase in EXP coming into the expansion. We're looking at charging, over 6 months worth of these buffs, which most FCs will only be able to get, I believe it's like 8 a month, because every 3 days you get one if you stay on it, and we're being pretty religious with it and getting it in the charging station about roughly every 3 days. So the amount of EXP generated when we hit that expansion is going to be insane, and everybody's going to benefit from it. It's going to be incredible, and it's also going to give us the edge to where, while those are active, we're going to be charging crafting and gathering EXP to follow for the as much time as we can get them for following the EXP. So following the battle EXP. But
we've got crafting gear ready to go. We've got
oh yeah. So there's a lot of excitement on the horizon when it comes to that.
The only disappointment of all of 14 that I've had is no suplexing the Phantom Train. Omega 5.
At least we get to see the Phantom Train.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see the Phantom Train, but you can't suplex it.
Right.
It's not the same.
Oh well, I mean, there's an effect this game has, when you're coming into it for the first time, when you are experiencing, all the characters, the story, the amount of puns that they put in the game.
Which, we were talking about Koji Fox earlier, who's responsible for a lot of that, if not all of those puns.
Oh yeah,
like that's his baby, right? Like
all the
like those puns.
It's him and Bon Ryota that work on most of the writing, and then he's responsible for the English. The English, and there are a lot of things in the game that have slightly different, not so much different meanings, but like slightly different.
Slant.
It'll be slightly different than the Japanese, but enough to make people chuckle a little bit and see references to things. So
like the name of quests, things are like, wait.
That being said, we've got Gracie telling us what is your first impressions of 14? What was that like, and when did you start playing?
So I was gifted the game somewhere in the 2.x region.
Oh, okay.
But like my friend group likes to branch out from the game that we played for many, many years now. That is, Final Fantasy has become the main. So we played WoW. And as things died down, because I was talking about earlier, WoW has really, really long end of expansion patches. So their like patch burnout is hard. Like it is really,
oh wow,
it's not good to the player base. So it hurts, like it's really painful. So a lot of times you see a pretty large, like almost half the player base unsub and go do other things. And Final Fantasy just happened to be the thing that my friends were like getting on, and I was like, I'm not so sure about this. They drug me in, I made a character, and then they outleveled me. And I played a little bit, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I can be like, whatever I want to be. Hey, look, I've got a kitty girl. This is kind of cool. And it really didn't like kick in until like I think there was a couple of patches, and I was getting more and more disenfranchised with WoW. Like I was kind of ping-ponging back and forth, and I finally just dove in and gave it its shot, and I started playing Black Mage, and I was a Black Mage main for quite a long time, being this like wonderful little pyromaniac turret just was like my favorite thing in the world. Being a healer now, I'm disgusted at the number of times that I've said healers adjust, but you know, it's a thing. It's happened. But yeah, really, I don't think there was like one moment in particular. It was this slow burn, like kind of having this cynical look at MMOs in general, because I'm a social person. For me, MMOs just enhance my ability to be around people. I'm really a book nerd that just happens to like these really beautiful virtual books that we have.
Yes.
Like, so I've gone to other MMOs that are based on books that I've enjoyed. And I've tried Lord of the Rings. I've tried the Star Wars MMOs. Like, and I like them all, but Final Fantasy is the one that really, like, sunk in for me. And minus a couple of little breaks, I've been here since then. And it's, yeah, this is my main squeeze as far as MMOs go now. And I've, on the social side, I've met some of my very, very best friends, including my partner here.
Aww.
So, well, okay, I brought my partner here, but we've spent a lot of our time here. Let's put it that way. We met through a group that I know through Final Fantasy. So you know how those friend circles really kind of like swirl and mix. Final Fantasy has been responsible for some of the best things in my life.
Aww.
So,
Aww,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, some people know that I started this game, at the beginning and was in beta. I had actually gotten the collector's edition of 1.0 and I never installed it because my computer at the time was kind of meh. It couldn't play it. And if you were around back then, you would know that you had to have a pretty decent computer that could handle, rendering flower pots that were breaking the game, breaking the computer, I should say. Yeah, that's it was a bit rough. So I never installed it. But I kind of got on board for following 14 and what was going on in it and watching some friends play 1.0, and then it was right before. It was like a matter of months before the whole end came, and then I followed the whole cycle through. From the very first live letter onward, prior to the game's launch, throughout the whole Realm Reborn project. Like the original live letters were way before ARR launch. They were like kind of a message for the people who were looking forward to ARR, to kind of looking forward. Yoshi's catchphrase. Please look forward to it. People who were looking forward to it though, for real, and following those updates. And so the one live letter would be talking mostly about how the controller would work, and the next live letter would be talking about how this other thing would work, and so I was just like really anticipating this game. And originally I had no plans to come to 14 to lead a guild. I just wanted to kind of experience it casually. As a Final Fantasy fan, who usually likes to do everything in most games, I chose to kind of take it casually at first because my real life career, being very busy all the time, is actually the reason why I left Final Fantasy XI, which I played for over 5 years. And I did have a guild that I actually inherited in 11, and that the inspiration for that guild that it was an okay guild. We were literally just a link shell back then. Link shells was like the only forum for people to group up as any sort of guild-like experience. And it was like very simple. It was just as simple as the link shells in 14 today, but that's all we had, and we only had one link shell, and you can only be one at one time. So we had Ebon Blades. Ebon Blades was where we started, and I got handed Ebon Blades and turned it into Somnus Infinitum. And then Somnus Infinitum was very casual at a time that the game was kind of in its twilight years. So a lot of people were doing raiding, and we had people that I had recruited to Somnus Infinitum that were like, oh, we want to raid and we want to have a raid group. So we actually split into 2 link shells, and I had one of my second in commands run the raid one, and then the casual one actually died out not too long after that. And the raid one was called Knights of Altana, and they're actually, believe it or not, they're still active to this day. They have set records on Bahamut server, and they're still doing pretty well. So I'm really proud of them. But I had to like step away, and so during that time that I stepped away for career purposes, I was graduating high school. I was already doing college. Even prior to graduating high school, started college early, and was just insanely busy. I was getting involved in press scenes. I was doing lots of web development and stuff like that, and just I was like, I can't with how much of a time sink 11 is compared to 14. It's not a game you can just pick up, go to Duty Finder, get your dailies done, and go. This is like, 11 is a game that you had to spend an hour trying to at least form a party, and then you would maybe get a quarter of a level done after you farmed one monster over and over for hours. So, and you die, you lose so much EXP, and all that progress is undone. And it was just like becoming too much of a chore. And I hate to say that, but it did. And I had to, say goodbye to that community. And I kind of was feeling like I had done everything I wanted to do. And I told myself, never am I going to ever dedicate that much time to an MMO ever again. And the funny thing is, as fate would have it, as the years went by, things actually got easier for me as far as, I wasn't looking at graduating. I'd actually spent several years getting into my positions to where I could actually manage myself very well and my time very well. And so by the time A Realm Reborn launched, it was actually just enough time for me to find some time, even though I chose to be casual, to find some time to get into it. And, it's really hard for me not to get into a Final Fantasy game with how much I love FF. I love every game. Like, there's no FF game that I hate, even ones that are considered the worst. I still love them, to a high degree. I can always find things that I love about them, and it's kind of just one of those things where people ask me what your favorite FF is, and I'm like, all of them, because I can't truly choose one. And if I did, I would have to break it down to at least 3, and I would say 7, 8, and 10 were my favorites. But when it comes to 14, I walked into this game, with all of that in my past, and was, not planning to lead. And I was doing that thing that 11 players who come here do. They basically compare it to 11 too much, and they're kind of salty. And that's exactly what I did the first couple weeks I was in the game. Right on ARR launch, like it's funny because in the beta, I didn't really care that much of the beta because not very much of the game was out in the beta. And the first phase of beta, everybody was wearing like these brown sacks, like nobody had real gear. And it was very simple. We were just like running around Gridania and just playing with the menu, and fighting a few things in the Shroud, and that was about it, And they would add another area, and we'd test that. But coming into the actual launch, I started getting irritable because I'm like, oh, this isn't like 11, and I had actually talked to people from the old Link Shell who wanted to meet up. And in the beginning, it was very difficult. You couldn't choose your server. You couldn't, just name change, or there was no transferring. You basically had to make a new character and random roll your server until you got the one that you wanted. And then not all of them were open either. And I even had to get to the point of, constantly clicking the same areas all the time just to try to hope that it would go and get me into the right server. And it was really tough back then on launch. And I didn't really have a bad experience per se, but I had a lot of disappointment because of all these years of 11 that I had behind me. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know what are like, what's a hotbar, because in 11 you have a little finger pointing at a menu, and that's use all your skills that way. I never had a game where I actually had like a hotbar. I didn't play WoW. I didn't play hardly any other MMOs. And so even console games I played were just regular Final Fantasy games or platformers and stuff like that. So I wasn't used to these terms. I didn't know what an AoE was. I knew how to tank, but I knew that. But I never had gotten used to any of those terms from anywhere else. So I was overwhelmed when I started playing. I was frustrated, overwhelmed, and the people that were from 11 that were all going to meet up and remake our old glorious guild, they didn't show. Only 3 of them showed up, and we were all stuck on a European server where English was only 1/3 of the spoken languages. And I don't know German and French, and it became really difficult to be happy there when I was getting frustrated by all the terminology on top of the language issue, on top of people not showing, and just it kind of stacked up to the point where a couple months I didn't even play after the launch. Like I played to the launch month and then took a break from like November and December into 2013 going into 2014. But something special happened. Something very special happened at the very beginning of January 2014. An old friend of mine had invited me to come to Midgard Stormer, and he told me, he's like, you know, I know you're not doing that well over there on Ragnarok. If you can make it into Midgard-Stormr, you can join my community and at least be part of, you know, a community, and you can create a new character and maybe give it a second shot, start it in a different town or something. Just try to give it a second shot. And I'm like, okay, you know, and I think it was depressing for me too, because it's a Final Fantasy game. I wanted to enjoy it. And for the first time, I had found myself not enjoying a Final Fantasy game. And I have to also remind everybody that I was 23 at that time. I'm almost 31 now. And when I was 23, I had a kind of a different set of expectations, and I was a little harsher on how I judged things. So I know that today, I think if I would have started at, you know, at this age, after having other, you know, 10 more years of almost 10 more years of gaming experience since, I would have probably been a lot more forgiving than I was at that time. But when I did start over on Midgard-Stormr, our server, right where Azure is, I did start enjoying it more, and I did enjoy having a couple people, you know, to actually play with, and that's when everything got better. And I know a lot of people enjoy having people to play with. There's a big difference in playing alone and playing with people, especially in this game. And from that point forward, Destiny kind of led me to eventually making Azure. And it's kind of amazing how all that happened and how far we've come over the years. And I had to make a big decision when we founded. You know, I had to promise everybody that I would give it my all despite my busy schedule, you know, in real life, and that I would put my all into it. And I even kept Reika, my character has a coronet that she wears on Paladin, and a like a tiara on other jobs that is actually supposed to be my character's lore symbol of that promise to do everything that I can for the community, despite busyness and everything. So I've kept that promise all these years, and I plan to continue to. And things, you know, turned around in a massive way from my experience, going from being disappointed and kind of let down initially because of, you know, my expectations and not being used to, you know, the way the game played. It completely 180'd, and you know, I've enjoyed every moment all the way through till now, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm still just as excited for the expansion as I was for the first expansion, even as much as I was excited for launch even. And you know, I've had a pretty unique experience myself as a leader of Azure, and I know that has contributed a lot to my enjoyment of the game. And we always have ups and downs, but we always have a brighter, you know, brighter outcome. And so this experience is not one that I would want to trade. And I also feel like, as a 14 player, not just leader of Azure or anything else, as a 14 player, being able to experience the majority of the game and the game from here forward, I feel like that is a huge privilege and something that is a once in a lifetime experience. I don't think that any other experience with any other game is like this when it comes to the game's story in real life, of the troubles that the game has gone through and how it's turned around. The people behind this game are incredible individuals, and then the way this game has come out and how successful it's been. There's just so much to 14 that makes it special beyond just the content in the game. And this is like, you know, memories that I'm going to look back on when I'm old, and it's that kind of thing. That's how much it means to me. So my impressions at first were bad, but because of my own expectations, and then they turned around to be something that I never would have dreamed of.
Yeah, I think that's all of us in Azure now.
For sure.
You know, you enter this community and you just don't know what to expect. I mean, we're 350 strong, and we've got one hell of a support staff and one hell of a leadership group. And it may seem overwhelming at first, because
a heck of a membership too.
You know, I guarantee to a lot of people it's very overwhelming at first, but once you get to know us, we're like everyone else.
That's how I was. I mean, I left my first time. It was too much at the time. And now I can't imagine playing this game, or, you know, I can't imagine not being in Azure now.
Yeah, our community definitely has a lot of features. We work to try to kind of cover as many bases as we can and also fit the needs of the majority of the community as best as we can, while providing a lot of support channels and portals, for help and things like that. And organization goes a long way. Coming into Azure, I can only imagine folks that aren't used to it. They just have so much to take in, and I'd rather that than there be a lack. I'd rather that than just be kind of a standard community that doesn't go very far beyond just having buffs up and people talking. And I'm glad that we have so many resources and resourceful people as well in our community. And I do know that with what we work on, especially from the top here and seeing the whole community, I'm proud to say that we do cover a lot of bases, and so I'm glad that we provide that for people. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for joining this episode. It was really awesome to learn about your experiences of 14 as well as your thoughts on all the upcoming content. We will be looking forward to that tournament here coming up at the end of the month, and the Azure Day to follow at the beginning of, second week of March, I believe, 13th and 14th. We thank you all for listening to this episode. This is episode 6 of the Azure Infinitum podcast, and we have plans to keep this thing going a little more regularly for all of you. So we hope that all of you listening can kind of get an idea of some of the personalities of the people who are on the podcast. We're all council members here. And also that the podcast serves for a way for you to sort of absorb more information about our community, about us, and also about the game as well, and hot topics and things that we'll try to bring up here. And if there's things that you want to see on the podcast, let us know. Let us know. We are always open to suggestions too. So thank you for listening, and take care.
You all in episode 7.
We'll see you guys around.
As free as the Azure sky.